Hello, welcome to our June episode of Women's Wellness with Dr. Dow. Our June topic is HPV, Should I Worry? Human papilloma virus, aka HPV, is the most common type of sexually transmitted infection. Whether you're sexually active or not, HPV can be transferable. Most of the time, HPV is pretty harmless, and often women don't even realize that they have acquired this. But in some cases, it can have serious consequences. Menopause can be another trigger because, like chickenpox, the virus can lie dormant in the bodies of people who are infected earlier in life, and then reactivation risk can increase around age 50. This month, let's chat about what all women should know for HPV, whether the HPV vaccine is necessary, and what other steps you can take for the best care for your well-being. Raising awareness can give you choices, and knowing you have options is fortunately very empowering. So once again, I would like to welcome Dr. Dow for joining us for tonight's episode. Thank you so much for carving out time for us this month.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege and an honor for me to talk about this very pressing topic of human papilloma virus. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Dr. Dow, can we start by you explaining more to us exactly what HPV is and how common is the HPV virus?
Well, I think the very first thing, maybe we should talk about virus in general.
Okay, let's do that.
I think in the sense of what virus is that we almost think virus is almost like a life on its own. Basically, a virus is a peptide, a protein molecule, or it's almost like bacteria, but it's much, much smaller than a bacteria. And what it does is the difference between this and the bacteria is that the virus has is a very strong, robust set of what we call DNA and RNA, DNA or RNA. Basically, it has some genetic information or some, shall we say, computer instructions, that's within the cell itself. And what a virus does is that it cannot live on its own. What it does is it lives through the host. So what it does is that it delivers these DNA or RNA information into a host cell, like our body or like an animal. Mm-hmm. And through many different means. And once this DNA or RNA gets into the cell, it infects the host and it duplicates and it becomes an infection. And we call that viral infection. Like, for example, measles. Measles is a viral infection. For example, herpes virus is a viral infection. For example, influenza A is a viral infection. And not at least what we're talking about today is the human papilloma virus, and that's also virus. We could almost say that a virus is pretty ingenious. I have to say that the composition and the creation and the production and the birth and the life of this beautiful virus, it's just incredible. Now, virus is not always bad. I think we are always used to virus being bad. I mean, virus serves a purpose. Virus actually carries and spreads genetic information to different animals, and that it enriches our body to become much more immune or become stronger against certain diseases. So virus actually, you could almost say virus is actually very good for our health sometimes, if you look at it that way. But nevertheless, having a viral infection is serious and sometimes can be even deadly. So I think it's important to take all virus infections seriously and look at how we can deal with it in the most expedient ways and the most effective way. Virus is not the same as bacteria. So when you treat virus and when you treat bacteria, it's a totally different kind of way of treating. You need antiviral instead of antibacterial. Antibacterial medications or herbs tends to be having killing function. It kills the bacteria itself. Viral, though, is more neutralizing. It's more like neutralizing the effect of some of these duplicated bad viral infected cells already. So these are some of the things that it's quite different between those two units. So I would say that virus is it's an amazing little creature, and it spreads nicely, and we can keep up in the sense of trying to, in like antibacterial, like antibiotic, where when we find a certain bacteria, we start to create the medication for it, a new antibiotic. But antivirals are much harder, takes much longer to deal with, and they take much longer to create. So a lot of times, instead of giving an antiviral kind of medication, we tend to go to vaccination. We tend to trying to use a segment of the dead virus and then create a vaccine out of it and inject either a dead or a semi-alive kind of vaccine into a particular animal or person to help to defend against a certain disease. For example, measles right now, we have such a pressing issue, about 1,000 infection of measles. I think almost anybody who is doing air travel now has to be more cautious, especially if you have not immunized against measles. You just have to make sure your immune system is very, very strong. And even with adults, where that we have not had a measles injection vaccination for a while, and if we do have a compromised immunity, it might be a good idea to do what we call a catch-up vaccination. And not just on the measles alone, but today we are supposed to talk about HPV, so virus. So I'm just give you a little rundown on the virus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So can you tell us then, if I understand correctly, and hopefully our audience understands correctly, with the virus, we are not able to kill it completely the way that we would with bacteria, but we are able to neutralize it by making our bodies more resilient through different means, correct?
Yes. The most important thing is strengthen the immune system.
Okay. So now, why don't we go into what kinds of challenges an HPV virus infection can cause?
Well, first of all, how about let's talk a little bit about the infection state of HPV. First of all, it's on the average in the United States. We are talking about somewhere between 50 to 70 million people has been infected with HPV.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
and how does a person get it?
Well, most of the time it's sexually transmitted. Okay. I would say probably 90% of time, above 90% of time is sexually transmitted. And a lot of time is through intercourse or oral sex or anal sex. All three different methods can get you infection. The vaginal intercourse probably has one of the highest rate, and it follows by anal, and then it follows by oral. So some people think oral sex is not sex or is not transmittable. That's wrong. You can definitely transmit, and there's actually a few cases of oral cancer or throat cancer due to HPV infection. So it's definitely possible to have that. And a lot of people, and some people, especially men, boys, men don't usually exhibit much HPV symptoms. Sometimes, the wart, if you can look at wart, it's like a wart-like kind of skin lesions. And sometimes men just don't have it. Sometimes they have it on the penis or on the genital area or anal area. But otherwise, there's quite a bit of people who just don't exhibit any symptoms. So you could be a carrier and infect a woman without knowing that you're infecting a woman. So it's a pressing issue, and a pressing issue is not because HPV, every single strain. Now, again, HPV has many different strains now. Okay, now the strain that gives or creates, shall we say, vaginal, vulval cancers or endometrial cancers, basically strain number 16 and 18. Those two strains tend to have, shall we say, a higher percentage. I think the last time I read my literature, somewhere around 70% of time, higher percentage of turning into cancerous situation and cells eventually. And eventually, the word eventually is that we don't really know when. Okay, it turns. I believe firmly it turns when your immune system is not as good.
Okay, right, because it can go dormant for a long time, if I understand correctly, right?
Yeah, you can treat it. It can go dormant. If you don't treat it, sometimes it goes dormant also. So it's not necessary that this disease cannot be treated. It's just that this disease tends to flare back up. Okay,
Okay.
it has a nasty habit of coming back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And can we talk a little bit about the other ways it can be contracted, the non-sexually transmitted ways? Because there are individuals that do get this without it being through some form of intercourse.
Well, it's not as strong, but you can, for example, touch, or, there's this whole process. There's a little scare that talk about how, you know, you go to a gym place, you go to exercise, a gym place or yoga studio, and then you get contracted with a war, or shall we say, HPV.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it can happen. It's not a strong situation. That means is that it is possible,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and especially if we clean this equipment quite well,
That's what I
like,
was going to ask you. What's the preventative means in that
yeah,
type of
yeah.
case?
You really just need to even clean with soap and water,
Mm-hmm.
gets rid of this virus. You just have to make sure the equipment's clean.
Mm-hmm.
So I always recommend that when somebody goes to a gym, I presume the gyms are very good. And if you're really anal about it, so to speak, you're anal about it, you just wipe it down a little bit before you start your exercise routine. And also, don't forget that and what we have found, some of these infections through the gym equipment, a lot of times, shall we say, non-lethal warts. These are tend to be skin warts. They tend to be a strain that your body gets rid of it eventually anyway. It's pretty non-lethal type. It's not the one that causes cancer. So I don't want everybody to all of a sudden say, oh my God, let's don't go to gym. Let's don't go to public place. I think
Right.
I think that would be blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in fact, I want to make a stress this is that majority of HPV virus is non-lethal. Majority of HPV virus is self-limiting, and it gets rid of on its own. And when your immunity is strong, it gets rid of it most of the time. The one that is the most problematic is the one usually transmitted by sex, and usually is strain number 16 and 18.
Okay. So then how would a person identify that they have that strain in them? Are they going to see something? Because you were saying like for a man, he might not even realize he's a carrier for a long time. And then what about for the woman? What does she see that makes her have that moment of saying, oh, wait a moment, something's off with my body?
Yeah, I think that's a reason why a woman unfortunately has to be the burden, in a sense, is that we have to do a regular pap smear.
Ah, okay, so that's part of our pap smear.
Regular vaginal exam, regular pap smear. And when there is some issues, it will show up in the pap smear. The pap smear will show the presence of HPV virus. It won't show the strain. So we need to, if that's the case, and then we do a further testing, is basically by culture, we will go in and scrape a little bit of tissue, and then we will send away to the lab to actually identify the strain, particular strain of the HPV.
Mm-hmm. And is it still like I've always been taught, and what I do is every year I go and get my pap smear. Is it still that case, or do we need to be more aware as women nowadays and do something bi-yearly? I don't know really.
No. I think the screening usually is once a year.
Once a
I
year.
think, I think you just have to make sure you keep it up, especially if you're sexually active, and especially if you have multiple partners. I mean, we know.
Not included.
Okay, so I mean, other people. Okay, so and if you know that you have you have change of sex partner, have new boyfriend, new girlfriend, whatever you might be going through. A lot of times you want to make sure you keep up with your physical and with your pap smear and checkup.
Okay. I have another question for you, which I was going to ask you later on, but because we've been kind of on this thread, can you explain to us as women, what is the difference between genital pimples and genital herpes that are associated to HPV? How can we see physically the difference on our body?
Well, you sometimes can, you sometimes cannot. Sometimes we have to scrape it and do a little biopsy. Okay.
Okay.
So the herpes tends to be little clusters of little tiny bubbles. Okay.
Mm.
Wart, vaginal wart or HPV tends to be raised bumps, tend to be round raised bumps. They are quite different. And because the bumps are much bigger, okay, much bigger. And the herpes virus tends to be more little clusters of white, I mean, close clusters of little bubbles. So they are quite different in the sense of their appearances. Pimples are different. Pimples usually one little bubble, and it's just right there. And a
Yeah.
lot of times the pimple can be HPV. Okay, so a lot of times we just watch it carefully, and sometimes we need to do a biopsy. But a lot of times, if it goes away, then we don't really need to do anything about it at that point in time.
Mhm.
But that's kind of like the difference between these three things. So HPV is not the same as herpes virus, and herpes genitalia it's different than HPV. So they are not exactly the same, and they are both of them are not the same as HIV. So they are different viruses, and they go and hit different part of the body, and they have different expression and presentations of disease and symptoms, as well as progression.
Okay. Thank you. I'll leave that up to the audience if they have more questions regarding that. Tell us, Dr. Dow, what are your thoughts on the HPV vaccine?
You know, that's a really, shall we say, personally, I don't have any issue with it. I actually promote and acknowledge the necessity of it. But there is a lot of people who really just don't like this vaccination. A lot of people don't even like vaccination to start with. So
Mhm.
I think we need to, go back in time and take a look at the history of vaccination. It's interesting, as a doctor of Chinese medicine, our whole goal is to prevent diseases and prevent illnesses. No different than Western medicine. We all really work in the same way.
Mhm.
Our toolbox is different. Our tools that we use is different.
Mhm.
So when I look back and look at a very old physician about 1500 to 2000 years ago, his name is Dr. Ge Hong. Dr. Ge Hong is actually the very first person who actually talk about how you can do inoculation against smallpox by drinking the tea from the ashes of a dead person's clothes that has been infected with smallpox.
Oh,
So I
wow.
think that is probably the very first, shall we say, documentation of inoculation. Now, don't forget, this is a very crude way of doing it. You don't know how much vector, how much, if there's any kind of smallpox virus, their virus on it or not. You don't really know. So you just don't know whether or not how effective that is. But he has done that, and he has shown that it could work. And so you could say in the world, that's probably the very first documented inoculation. And actually it was through Chinese medicine. He was a Chinese medicine physician. So in some ways you could say that we didn't invent vaccination. We literally started the vaccination process by inoculating. And later on in the 1400s, some wonderful European physicians came up with some ideas of, hey, why don't we inject some of the dead viruses or live viruses and
Mhm.
see how that would work against certain viral illnesses. And so that's how vaccination started. Okay. So, and the principle is sound. I mean, the principle of vaccination is that our body get exposed with a segment or a small amount of dead viruses, and that can help our body to create antibodies against it. And if our body is able to get used to that and create antibody against it, then we would not actually get a disease itself. Okay,
Mhm.
so that is really the bottom line, the essence of what a vaccination practice is all about. Now, I don't know if you remember your vaccination schedule. My vaccination schedule when I was a little kid was literally only 3 or 4. Okay, I mean, you're talking about, if I remember, it was smallpox at that time, and there was tetanus shot, there's a polio. I think that was it. I don't think we even get influenza shots. I don't even think we get hepatitis shots in the old days when I was growing up in Taiwan. And that was a school sponsored mandatory shots that we have to do, vaccination. So moving forward to this day, what we are seeing is that we are seeing like literally 32 to 38 shots before 2 years old. So there's a lot of vaccination that has to be done. We don't really know how our body and how our baby's body can handle it. But that's also the time their immune system is the most vulnerable. So we have a sticky situation. I don't think this is a very easy thing to resolve. I personally believe in vaccination, the principle of it, the practice of it. I'm a little questionable in the sense of so much vaccination so fast. But let's talk about HPV. I think the HPV was a very important vaccination to talk about because we believe that before you have sexual activities, if you can have a vaccination before you have the first sexual activity. So a lot of time, the CDC recommends somewhere between 12 and 15 years old. This is the time where you need to do, it's 2 shots. You do 1 shot first, and then later on you do a booster shot. And that's usually a recommendation for all females. And also, they are also starting to recommend for males, also for boys too as well. And the reason being is that boys can actually have HPV without actually exhibiting symptom, and sometimes when they get cancer, they will be too late. So a lot of times that's the current recommendation. And I think that's sound because by that time, 12, 15 years old, you're basically done with maturity of your vaccination at that time. And so I don't think the burden to the body is going to be so great at that time. So if you're asking me about vaccination for HPV only, and that's all we are talking about, I think I would recommend it. And you could say the truth is, if you just have one sex partner, and if you really have a monogamous situation or relationship, it really reduces your risk quite a bit.
Sure.
But the truth is, I don't know if anybody can, project that or predict that. That's the issue. If you can really predict your life, what your life going to be, I don't think anybody could do that. When you get older, you realize, oh my God, I mean, what have I gone through, and who am I with? And you don't really literally don't have any idea. I mean, when you're young, you have no idea. So I think having that vaccination, I think it's a sound practice. It's not a thoughtless practice. Just let's vaccinate everything. But I think it's sound practice because I personally has 2 experiences of losing 2 people that I love who have actually died from metastasized vaginal cancer in a very early age of 48, and the other one's 50. So it's been very painful for me to watch that, and I knew and I know that I think that vaccination could have probably saved their life. And so with that in mind, that's of course my experience. Other people may have different kind of experience, but at least as a medical practitioner, I think that is a sound practice. So thank you.
Thank you. So on this topic then of the vaccination, before we jump into to dive a little bit more into cervical cancer, on the topic of vaccinations, because I have to say I'm with you, where I actually think there's a lot of benefits to doing vaccinations, and I question too the time span of it, but I believe it is essential for society as we are today. But what can we do on behalf of our children? You were saying, like, by the time with this one, by the time an individual is receiving it, they're what, 12, 15, you said? So their bodies have matured more. They're still going through hormone issues, of course, but their bodies are mature. Once they've had that vaccine, what could be done post-vaccine to just ensure, I guess, that it's the most gentle way that the body could intake it? Is there something that parents can do on behalf of their children post-vaccine to feel more at ease that it's going to be okay?
Well, I think you can anticipate side effect, and the side effect maybe they have a little mini viral infection. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, majority of people is going to have some side effects, or maybe a little discomfort, maybe feeling like a little bit low, like almost you had a viral infection, maybe a little body ache, maybe a little chill, maybe a little fatigue. And occasionally you may have low-grade fever, and you could treat it accordingly. There are plenty of acupuncture treatment and herbs that I deal with, that I treat patients, that actually get rid of some of these effect of the vaccination. So that's actually something that that's very, very effective and very helpful. I think the area that we need to look at is those people who actually have not been vaccinated, and is a large number of people who's been infected with HPV. How do we treat that? And
Okay.
I think that's something we need to move into, because that is, 59 million people.
Okay,
It,
so let's do that now then.
yeah, it's a lot of people, and it's actually, I don't want people to think this is not treatable. It's absolutely treatable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's you need to understand viral infections has a lot to do with your immune system.
Okay.
So the stronger your immune system, the better you will be able to knock out this HPV. On a regular basis, every year I would treat somewhere between 5 to 8 cases of HPV, and
Mm-hmm.
majority of HPV cases are flare-ups and recurrences. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that means they sometimes go away, they sometimes don't, and if they go away, they come back. So they don't, stay away sometimes. So these patients seek my help, and my job is to keep them away once for all.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time in my intake, and I always find there are probably a very good reasons why some of this HPV infection flares back up. And one of the major things is stress. And one of the major things is they are vulnerable. They are under, they are not so healthy. They were sick for a while. They have chronic allergies that burdens their body, or they have chronic stress that actually makes their immune system weaker. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time in those situations, the HPV flares back up. So what we're trying to do is no different than when we treat other type of viral infections and weakness of the immune system. We're trying to strengthen their immune system. And so there's things that we can do. Obviously, things like vitamin C, vitamin D seems to be helpful for your immune system, as well as some amino acids such as L-lysine or L-arginine. Sometimes taking 500 milligram per day is actually can be helpful. In the Chinese herbal regimens, we have products that we use. We have a product called basically immunity that we use. And in this immunity product, we have basically for CTI and honeysuckle flower, which are some of the very natural herbs that we use for strengthening and also helping to neutralize viral situations. I
Mm-hmm.
also personally use a lot of the virus fighter, which is a combination of different supplements. And this is a product that we use, is a combination of vitamin A, C, and thiamine, and riboflavin, and niacin, as well as zinc and copper. And we have some elderberry in there, echinacea in there, different things that can actually be very helpful, and a little bit of astragalus to actually help to strengthen your body in fighting viruses. So
And that's the inflammation fighter or the immunity?
this is a virus fighter. This is
Virus
actually
fighter.
the
Ah,
virus.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The other one we have is the immunity.
Mm-hmm.
Immunity. And usually this is what we would prescribe as a supplement for patients. But when they are deeply in HPV virus infections, then we would actually treat them with a lot stronger herbs and acupuncture. And once that clears, then we put them on supplement and have them take it regularly. And I have many patients that the HPV just they don't come back anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it can be done. It can be treated, and I think that it's you need to be really proactive, and it's a way also to help you to understand your lifestyle. If your lifestyle is so stressed out, this is
Mm-hmm.
maybe a good time to really change how you do your life, make your life much more meaningful, much more healthier, less stressful. Can always be helpful.
Okay. Okay. Why don't we talk then about diet? Is diet come into play as well?
Yes, I'm going to give you two scenarios. The first scenario is what food you should eat when you are already having HPV infection.
Okay.
I think it's like every single viral infection is very similar. One, you do not eat foods that can load up and actually increase burden for your body and
Mm-hmm.
feed the virus. Part of the feeding the virus is going to be a lot of the sweets,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the alcohols. I think you should avoid that for sure. And trying to stay away from overly spicy foods, and
Mm-hmm.
and eat a regular and try to eat things that you're not too allergic to, or like for example, if you have dairy intolerant, try not to get too much diarrhea if you can from dairy products. Stay away from
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's also I always recommend that if you are in a viral infectious state, you must try to avoid or reduce meat products. Eat more vegan diet at that point in time, and
Mm-hmm.
the vegetables tend to have very rich B vitamins as well as C vitamins that can be really helpful to be antiviral, natural antiviral. So I often recommend that, especially dark green leafy vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
So
Are
that's
there any types of vegetables they should stay away from? Or is
uh,
it
no. It's I think all vegetables are pretty safe. They're all pretty good. I
okay?
would just say that maybe more organic. Trying to not find one with a lot of pesticides. It's kind of hard these days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, trying to see, but I think it's easier now these days to find organic vegetables if it's possible.
Okay. And then you mentioned
Oh,
stress being a trigger earlier. Oh, go ahead.
I apologize. I
No, that's
haven't
okay.
touched. I haven't touched the one. So if you're trying to prevent HPV, you're
Yes.
trying to prevent the antiviral diets. It's basically you want to eat food that's rich in immune boosting or boosting food. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Things that has a lot of vitamin C, vitamin B and A, things like dark green leafy vegetables, colored vegetables, as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like bell pepper, for example, has a lot of vitamin C in there, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you have oranges, obviously have vitamin C in there.
Mm-hmm.
Spinach, for example, even though they tends to have a lot of heavy pesticides, see if you can try to find organic ones. That tends to be extremely helpful. So there are a lot of different vegetables that can be really good that you can do, and take some supplements. I think at a point that when you do have a past history of infection, it's good to probably take some supplements to help. Thank
Okay. You just, sorry, I'm going to deviate for 1 second because you brought up something that was a question in our last chat, and I never had a chance to ask you since it came after the episode. One of our individuals had wanted to know when they see, we were talking about green leafy vegetables previously, and you had also brought up organic and spinach, try and get it organic. And they were asking, when they see organic spinach at, let's say, like Trader Joe's or supermarket chain, is it okay to get that type of organic spinach, or let's say, I think they were trying to explain that they didn't have a farmer's market near them, but they still wanted to be able to buy the organic spinach they were seeing in the supermarket chains. Is that okay?
Yes, it is okay. Now you have to understand, organic, this whole word organic is not regulated.
Right.
It's certified by different bodies. So therefore, certification of organics differs from body to body. So you need to understand it's not necessarily a kind of kosher way of doing things. What I mean is that the organic something that's certified by one organization may not be the same as organic certified by the other organization. Uh,
Ah,
but overall, all organic vegetables and all organic farming practices sustainable farming as well as frequently reduced pesticide, if not no pesticide at all. So a lot of time that's much better for your health compared to just a regular commercial grown vegetables that uses a lot of pesticides. I think it's very important to reduce pesticides burden. We eat, especially if you like to be vegan vegan and if you like to be vegetarian, if you eat a lot of vegetables, I think it's very important to really reduce because you're eating a lot of these vegetables. You want to reduce the pesticide burden, chemical burden. So try as much as you can to go for organic sources if it's possible. And yes, you can get in the market. I think even the regular market sometimes now, not sometimes, they actually have organic section now, and they frequently have organic part that you can choose from.
Okay. And you had mentioned earlier about stress being a trigger for HPV. What do you recommend to individuals for being able to control their stress levels in relation to that?
Stress is a big topic. How much time do you have?
I know. In fact, I think we have to do another whole topic on that.
You want to open a can of worms. Yeah, okay. Let me have some whiskey and I come back, we'll talk about stress. But anyway, stress is really obviously two components to it. Is what's coming toward you and how you're reacting to it. And obviously, if you are somebody who really want to do a good job and good work, you take everything seriously, you tend to stress yourself a lot greater. But your life sometimes can be much more fulfilling in that sense. So it's not necessarily bad to have some stress in our life. It's only when the stress becomes overwhelming. And how do you know it becomes overwhelming? Is that when you start to get paralyzed, when you start to make stupid mistake that you usually don't, when you go too fast, when you're hurting yourself going too fast, when you don't even have time for lunch and meals, when you don't even have time to go pee and have taken a break, then you know you're probably doing too much. And in those situations, then you need to make some adjustments. Sometimes it's just the rhythm of your work that you need to make some adjustments. Sometimes it's your attitude. You have to make some attitude changes. Maybe that you have a boss who is always very critical and you take everything in as, oh my God, this is all about me. Well, I'm sorry, it's not all about you. When somebody's critical, they're really about themselves. So a lot of times, don't take that energy, don't automatically assume the responsibility and that energy into your life. Sometimes you need to learn to deflect it. You need to learn to give that energy away. So how you receive it, how you digest it, and how you use that stress, it's up to you. So a lot of times you can make your life easier or make your life harder. Depends on how you go through your life and how you deal with projects and work. Obviously, stress is not only about work. Stress can come from all directions. I think one of the things is a lot of people, we are having generations where people are growing older and they're taking care of their parents. That can be very stressful. I often say, there's a Chinese word, it's called 孝顺. It's basically filial piety. It's two words. The very first is filial piety. That means you must treat your parents well. You must take good care of your parents. The second is you must listen to all your parents and do what your parents want. Okay. So I often think about these two words and I say to myself, I can do the first part really well. Second part, I decided second part, I don't always have to go by their wishes. Okay. I realize I'm an adult. I know what could be good for them, what may not be so good for them. It's a negotiation process. Okay. So there's sometimes, if I can't do it, I can't do it. If I can do it, I will do it. And I'm not going to make a fuss over it. Okay. So a lot of times I learn to take good care of my parents, but not necessarily go by whatever they want. Okay. And so a lot of time I also find ways that can work for me too. So many times stress is also sometimes going your way, not always going someone's way. And you have to negotiate for that. And so I think, so that's part of it. So relationship can be very stressful. So you're trying to make the best out of your relationship. And I can say that there's no relationship is perfect. And you're lucky if you have a perfect relationship. That'll be wonderful. But I think every day that I grow up, every time when I wake up every day, I try to have a good relationship. I try to do something that it can make a relationship better if I can. And I think that's at least the type of attitude that you must have. Okay. And then you leave it alone. If things doesn't happen your way, then doesn't happen your way. This is not all about you. So things doesn't always gonna happen your way. Okay. That's okay. You have to be okay with it. And I think it's almost like if you are a piece of driftwood in this vast ocean, sometimes you're going to hit really big waves. Sometimes everything is all peace and calm. And that's kind of like life. And you have to go along with it and go with a nice attitude. At least I'm up. At least I'm breathing. The sun is out.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. I love it. Those were such good pieces of wisdom for all of us. So I hope the audience is beaming as much as me. So it's one of my favorite parts. I love when you dole out wisdom to everyone. You're good at that, Dr. Dow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we are almost at a point where we're going to open it up to audience questions. Perhaps for our audience, if you can start typing your questions into your message boards. Again, if you're on Facebook, Leah Jonas, our operations director, is on there and she's moderating and can pass over the questions to Dr. Dow and I. And then for those of you that are on Zoom, you have a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. And if you press that, you'll be able to write your comments in and we will see those too. In the meantime, as we're waiting for them, Dr. Dow, you had talked about cervical cancer before. So what do you want to share about cervical cancer tonight?
I think everything in what we do, I remember a very beautiful phrase and always stick to me in the Yellow Emperors of Classics, which is a very ancient scripture for Chinese medicine. And I believe it's the first 3 chapters. And there it says, average physicians treat what's diseased. Exceptional or superior physician treat what is not diseased. Every day I try to be an exceptional physician. Every day if I can, if I have the opportunity, I like to see in my patient when they come in for me to treat whatever illness they have at the present. Every day I hope I can predict what's going on, what's going to happen into the future. If I'm able, I want to help to prevent that disease coming in. So there's no difference with HPV. There's no difference in cancers, cervical cancer, and these cancers. Everything we can do, possibly we can do, we must go through prevention. I think prevention of disease is the most important. Okay. And I think right now we have a lot of issue with vaccinations in the sense of a lot of people, it's against it. I shouldn't say a lot of people, some people are against it.
Okay.
The majority of people actually is for it. And I think if we can find and we can improve even safer ways of vaccination, I think we can help our future generations to be better. So as regarding to the cervical cancer, I think pap smear and annual screening, it's a must. And especially when you are sexually active, it's extremely important to do so. You should not miss it.
Okay. Okay. So let's start opening this up to our audience questions. The first question that came in is we have an individual that would like to know if they're an adult, this individual is an adult and has never been vaccinated, can they still go and get vaccinated? Is it worthwhile to do that?
Usually we like to do vaccinations when you haven't had sexual partners. If you already have sexual partners, it may not work as well. You could try, but it may not work as well. So I think as an adult, you could try it, and at the same time, most important, don't see that as a, shall we say, don't see that as a cure, but see as an optional, but also trying to find ways to strengthen your own immune system regularly. And that is having a good lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
eat well, and have a good, happy life if it's possible. Have social engagement with people, and regular exercise, fresh air, good water, good food, good company. I think that makes a difference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question, can you go into a little more how you would personally treat somebody who has HPV? What would be your role in that?
First of all, we would evaluate holistically.
Mm-hmm.
So HPV a lot of time was discovered through pap smear and culture, followed up by culture. So
Mm-hmm.
we would take a look at which strain that we are dealing with. If we are dealing with these much more aggressive strains, then our treatment is going to be more aggressive. We also, at the same time, evaluate whole body symptoms. We take a look at are they having other symptoms that shows us that their immune system is weak. For example, are they having pains? Are they having discomfort? Are they having digestive issues? Are they having symptoms related with HPV, such as vaginal discharges, such as pains in the pelvic area, or dysmenorrhea, or other situation that has affected their menstruation, etc. We would first evaluate those things, and we would come up with herbal formula as well as treatment that can help to deal with these issues. So it really all depends on the virulent strain that they have, depends on their symptoms, their pulse, their tongue, and looking at their immune status. And from their immune status, we devise a treatment plan to help them to eradicate the HPV. We usually, personally, when I treat the HPV, I only give about a month to get rid of it. And a lot of time they will repeat the pap smear usually after 1 month to take a look at if it's gone. Usually I would say about 80% of time, if I treat it strongly, aggressively in 1 month, usually it goes away. And again, as I say, going away one time is not the goal. Not
Mm-hmm.
flaring up is the goal, is the
Right.
long term.
Right, because it's neutralized, it doesn't completely disappear.
That's
Okay.
right. So we have to do things to prevent it from coming back.
Okay. One of our
Oh, by the way,
individuals is.
sorry. Another thing, you
Oh.
gotta treat both partners at the same time.
That's a really good point, of course.
Yeah,
Okay.
you gotta treat both partners.
Okay. One of our individuals is asking, is it possible that the HPV won't be detected through the pap smear for a woman, that is?
Um, Not like there's no absolutes in life. Okay, so pap smear is a screening process, and I think it's not 100% sure thing. I would say it's an 80 to 90% sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you screen every year, most likely you're going to pick it up one of these years. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not so sure if we have better screening device than pap smear device, a methodology right now. I think it's still probably one of the best, one of the most sound way of finding out whether or not you have HPV or not. So I still recommend the pap smears. It's kind of like the first line screening.
I have a question, actually. What about then in teen girls and boys? Because generally, I don't remember having my pap smear until I became an adult woman. Do they start pap smears earlier with teens? Because we have so many teens that I think we need to be realistic. We have much more sexually active teens now than we did in your and my generation.
Yeah, we usually recommend people start having pap smears when you are sexually active.
Okay.
These days, you cannot be so certain anymore because so many people have HPV. Now, if you check and you have HPV, I mean, a lot of people are not going to have the virulent strain, the bad ones. But if you can find a few people that's bad one and treat it right away, I mean, you save a lot of problems later, especially when cancer situation. I'm not trying to scare people, but I think we need to be just being proactive,
Yeah.
especially when we are sexually active.
Okay. Going back to the questions, we have two more questions, please. The first one is, How long can the virus remain dormant in the body?
We don't really know. I think I'm not so sure viruses ever really truly be dormant. I mean, there is always a slight activity. Dormant just means that you don't feel any expression of it. Not having the expression of it doesn't necessarily mean they are not like at least a little bit active. Okay, they are not dead. Dormant doesn't mean they are dead. Dormant means they are having low activity.
Mhm.
So, for example, herpes virus, it frequently hides in the sacral area, in the sacral nerve plexus. So a
Mhm.
lot of time they can be really low grade virus activity there. And when your immune system is compromised, it starts to come out. It flares up, it comes out.
Mhm.
A lot of time not having a sleep, for example, in those situations, not having enough sleep gets you a lot of flare-ups. So coming back to this, I think sleep is actually a very important thing. It helps your immune system to recover and help you to fight with almost any kind of viral infections.
Okay. Our last question was actually, could it be that the virus is never activated? But I think you just answered that for us. So maybe we can just take a minute more then to talk about sleep a little bit more for everyone and help them understand that importance of the sleep factor.
You know, there was a study in a survey that shows that Americans don't sleep. Okay. And I have to agree. I have a lot of patients that I see, they don't sleep enough.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, should we blame it on Netflix? No, 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 no,
That
no. The
instant
HBO
gratification of getting stuck
lady
in the
was HBO
series.
was the Game of Thrones. I think that was
Oh,
the
yeah. HBO. Hmm.
yeah. Oh my God. I can't. You cannot. Please don't let me start with Game of Thrones. I don't want to start because if you start, you have to binge. It's just an end.
It was really good.
It's very good. Don't tempt me here. Don't tempt me. But that's a big issue. A lot of people don't get enough sleep. And
Hmm.
I can tell you, sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes it's our lifestyle. We just don't want to go to bed.
I can see that, yeah.
It's so enriching and so exciting. There's so many shows we can watch, whether
Hmm.
it's movies, TV shows, documentary, YouTube. You know, there's a lot of stuff we can watch. I mean, there is no shortages of programs for us to entertain ourselves.
Hmm.
I think we are becoming an excessive entertaining generation now. And I think we have taken the sleep time away and then we have replaced it with entertaining. I don't think that's a good trade.
Hmm.
Life is about balance. And when you don't sleep well, first of all, you get sick more often,
Yes.
you age faster.
Hmm.
Okay? So it's if you want to have a beautiful face for a long time, and if you have a beautiful hair, you better get your beauty sleep. And that beauty sleep is, you know, well rested, uninterrupted sleep, at least for 7 hours minimum. Ideally, I think a lot of people need 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. That's where we really should have.
Hmm. How do we readjust our sleep since we still have a few minutes left? Because I had one of our patients was asking me the other day and saying, oh, now with the daylight, the change in the time and it's daylight earlier, and that individual finds himself waking up earlier. And me too. I find myself getting up suddenly at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm like, who am I? I don't even like mornings. I like my 9 hours of sleep and that's it. But it's true. I've become as well that 5:30 person. What do you recommend for those of us that are going through now being in summer, the hours changing, and really waking up with daylight? I guess we wake up with daylight and go to sleep earlier.
It's lights. I think the key is work with lights.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you want to go to sleep earlier when the sun is still up and 9 o'clock at night, light is still out, shades it. You know, get some shades
Mm-hmm.
so that you can darken your room.
Mm-hmm.
And when you darken room, you can really sleep better. Another thing is make your room cold. There are actually studies that have shown if you make your room cold, you sleep longer.
Mm-hmm.
You sleep actually better.
Mm-hmm.
It's true when your room is very hot, it gets really difficult to sleep. So I remember in the old days in the summer in Taiwan, there's really
Oh,
very little
humidity.
AC. Oh my God, AC wasn't available. So what we have is we have a fan, and
Uh-huh.
we just, my mom hates this, but sometimes I would put a bucket of ice right in front of the AC, not AC, the fan. So
Uh-huh.
it comes by natural AC. You just have to
That
make
was
it.
very innovative, by the way.
It's you got no AC, you use that.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, so I think creating a good sleep environment is essential. Quiet, not so noisy. If you live in a noisy street, find shades or heavy curtains that
Mhm.
can take away the sound, or even use a noise cancellation headphone or like little earbuds that you can use that can be helpful. There are the allergists that actually has feet have they can fit people with a little ear buds that can seal 70 to 80% of sound, especially if you sleep with somebody who snores. So these are kind of things that you can do. It's not end of the world. There's
Mhm.
definitely things that you can do to try to make your sleep better.
Mhm.
Now, there are a group of people who have anxiety and they
Mhm.
don't sleep well regardless. So the treatment for that is to treat the anxiety. So
Mhm.
taking some sleep aids is not going to be that great. It doesn't help that well.
Mhm.
So, those are kind of patients that I treat. So the way I treat is I treat the anxiety. When the anxiety is much better, they sleep much better.
Okay. Thank you. Well, as we conclude tonight, what are the final pieces of advice you would like to give regarding HPV?
I think dealing with HPV is that you can fight it. You can be successful in dealing with HPV. You need to be knowledgeable, well
Mhm.
informed. Also, at the same time, making sure that your lifestyle is very strong in the sense of your immune system has to be strong. So
Mhm.
having a good lifestyle is paramount to start with. I think that's the basic. I think that's the basic to everything. The truth is, we don't like to see our patients sick. And don't
Mhm.
worry, we will always have patients to treat. Okay, so don't worry about us. Don't worry about doctors having not enough business. Okay, I think the key here is we want to see you well.
Mhm.
I think I'm happy when my patient's well, and I can call them and just say, "How are you doing?" I'm doing great. I'm having grandkids, whatever, and we can just what we call shoot the breeze. That I like to do, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's rather I like to see my patient doing well and coming for little tune-ups here and there and get them strong. That's really what I like to see.
Mhm.
So lifestyle is the basic, and the second thing is to make sure that be smart about your medical care. If you need screening, then make sure you do screening regularly. You are sexually active, and you gotta be smart and make sure you screen. And if you have multiple sexual partner, and make sure you also screen as well. And you need to consider giving your children, especially girls, but also boys, the possibility of HPV vaccination. Of course, this is a very new vaccination. It only started last few years, but so far it seems to be quite promising in what it can do. So I think you should consider it. Obviously, talk to OBGYN, obviously talk to your primary care physician about the pros and cons and the side effect of the vaccination so that you can at least be informed and actually eradicate some of the side effects.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dow, for tonight. As always, it's such a pleasure having you on with our audience. We already had individual asking, is this going to be in replay? Can I share it? So the answer is yes to that. We are very happy to provide it in replay. It will be on immediately after this Facebook episode concludes. And then we will also put it on YouTube at the end of the month for release. So we'll send a reminder out about that. And next up is actually next week, we're back with you again. It's a telestudy. So those that are interested, it will be a telestudy with Dr. Dow next Thursday. And then we conclude at the end of the month with the healing hour, and it will be Dr. Mao and Matthew, and they will be talking about men's health. So we hope you enjoy these episodes for June, and we look forward to you tuning in with us later on in the weeks to come. So thank you again, Dr. Dow. Enjoy a lovely evening.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I really enjoy spending time with you talking about this pressing topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.